Ready to go? Sure. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for attending this, the very last session of the day. My name is Charlotte Stowe. I am the lead curriculum specialist in the Office of the University Registrar.
And I'm Nick Seidentop. I work in the Office of Undergraduate Curriculum.
So we are here today to talk to you about CIM, Curriculum Inventory Management. For those who have been around campus for a while, you'll know two things. You'll know first that we have been working for several years to do a series of transitions for our curriculum. First, we worked very hard on getting the new university catalog up and running, which you can see at catalog.unc.edu. That merges the undergraduate bulletin and the graduate record. And the second phase of our implementation has been CIM. CIM replaces our previous course revision system of CRAS. We are going to be having a third phase coming up called CIM Program, and there will be more information on that next summer once we have it in place. But to go back to CIM, what we're presenting on today, CIM is the method through which we revise courses at the university. So far, we have had CIM up since early August. We have we've taken approximately 800 changes through CIM in that time. We've cleared about 90 of those, and we have almost 700 that are still somewhere in the process.
High volume.
High volume, yeah. And that is just the undergraduate deadline. We will not start getting our professional and graduate courses in the system until the January deadline. So we'll probably see another several hundred come in around that deadline.
So can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Is that like markedly different than what the norm is?
That's pretty normal.
Yeah, that's about on par with previous years. Yeah, usually at the end of the cycle, we're usually around 800 undergraduate course proposals. And that includes inactivations, it includes revisions, it includes new courses. But it's about there. The one thing that was really interesting I discovered today is looking at these numbers that Charlotte mentioned is that there's only 13 department roles that have a pending course proposal, which means almost 700 of these courses have gone through all the workflow steps at the department level. So I really was pleased to see that number, given the high volume, all these departments, multiple steps to workflow, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation, but that was very exciting about that.
So to go through our agenda real quick, we are going to first do a bit of background and overview about where we've been. Next, we're going to go into new features in CIM. And not on here, but also very important, we're going to cover a few best practices that we have learned in the short time that CIM has been live to campus. Then we're going to go into a discussion of future features that we will be implementing in CIM coming up. Because we've implemented CIM, but we are not just going to dust our hands off and say that's good enough. This is something where we're going to have iterative improvements to the product. After that, we are going to take questions. So just to rehash a little bit of what we've covered already, CIMS is the Course Leaf Curriculum Inventory Management System. It takes the entire process of revising courses on our campus and puts it through a workflow. It is a replacement for the CRAS system that we had previously. So the CIM system will take a course proposal from the very first thought that the faculty member has about it all the way through being reviewed by the administrative boards of the university or whatever professional school the course is going through. Every single step can be tracked in CIM. Course approval in CIM is tightly linked with the university catalog, so our catalog at catalog.unc.edu, and with the catalog that we have in ConnectCarolina. And to go a bit about the data structure of that, Nick will cover that.
Sure. So I get a lot of questions about sort of the data flow and how that works. And so this diagram attempts to kind of give you a visual of how that works. So let me just preface this by saying this is a real high-level overview, not a real technical level overview. So we'll start with ConnectCarolina, the big blue circle. On a nightly time cycle, we're going to focus on the CIM side, so the section here on the left. every night there is a push of course data into the CIM product. And it creates a CIM courses database, kind of represented by that red box. Some people describe it as pancakes, some people describe it as a hamburger, but it generates basically a database within the CIM product. And that includes all active courses and all inactive courses from ConnectCarolina. Okay. So then, instructor wants to make a revision to a course. They go into the CIM system and submit a form to revise, let's say, Econ 101. When they generate that form, it's going to pull all that data about Econ 101, title, description, credit hours, gen eds, populates the form, and then the instructor can make changes to that particular course. It then goes through its workflow process, goes through the approval process, department level, college level. We'll talk a little bit about that later. And then it goes into the bridge back into ConnectCarolina with that CIS bridge, which right now is not quite there yet, but we're getting very close to having that bridge working properly. So all of that data then goes back into ConnectCarolina. So that's the CIM side of it. Then the catalog side is kind of down on the bottom right. There's also a nightly push that pushes all of the course data, this time just for active courses, not inactive courses, and creates a database in the catalog environment. And then that database is used when making changes to the next edition of the catalog. So right now, we're working on editing the next edition, which is the 2019 edition of the catalog. So any changes that have gone through CIM and have been approved and loaded back into ConnectCarolina with the 2019 effective date, that data gets pushed into the catalog and displayed when we're editing. And then when we publish the catalog, which we do on June 1st of every year, several weeks later, we'll archive that and we'll create the next editing environment. So again, that's kind of just a high level of how that data sort of flows between the CIM system and the catalog system in ConnectCarolina. Okay, so we want to talk a little bit about some new features, particularly new features in CIM that were not available in the old CRAS system. And maybe just, if you have time, just go around. I'm just curious where everyone is from and what their involvement has been in the past. So maybe just say your name, your department, and if you've ever been involved with either CRAS or the new CIM system or the catalog system.
Mr. Johnson, I went to law school, been here 3.5 years. I haven't had the opportunity to work with him, but I'm familiar. I'm Kelly Thompson, I'm the office secretary for Regula, and I help edit the catalog. Heavy, yes.
Involved in
Actually,
all.
I've not been in CIM yet, but I'm getting ready to.
Right. And you
Our
were,
deadline is later, so.
that's right, January, if you're doing graduate courses, great.
So, as well as if there are for people in the inclusion side, about help them.
I'm Fran Dykstra, and my team builds the connections between Horsley and Markup.
I'm Kelly Miller, Associate Registrar over at Curriculum, so been working with this group to get all of this, and we're excited that we're almost there with Bridge.
My name is Zach Ward, coordinating student services, curriculum and goal studies, and all of the above.
Yeah.
In terms of functionality.
I'm Zach Harkness. I'm with Service Desk, and I'm here as technical support.
Right. Yes.
Thank you.
Good to
Thank
have you
you.
here. Okay, so one of the new features within CIM is that faculty can now propose their own course or propose course changes. And they can access CIM through a link that's available in ConnectCarolina in their Faculty Center, faculty portal. The other new feature is kind of with the workflow. So in the CRAS system, oftentimes departments would manage their course approval process outside of the system and ask a student services manager to enter all the information into the system. It would go to a department chair for approval, and then on to the college and the registrar's office. Well, we thought it was a great opportunity when implementing CIM to leverage it to manage the entire workflow of a course proposal, from an instructor submitting it to having it reviewed and evaluated by the department, and then on to the chair, college, and so forth. So this screen shows you a little bit about the workflow. Again, it's a linear process, a linear workflow, and that really highlight those two optional steps at the department level. You'll see that there's a student services manager step and a department committee step. So a department may determine they really want a student services manager part of the workflow. So we'll set up that role. We can have more than one person assigned to that role. So any proposal for that department gets routed to that step. If a department has a curriculum committee that reviews course proposals, we can set up that as an optional step in the workflow. So every course proposal goes to that step. And again, multiple people can be assigned to that committee role. Within the CIM form, it's really clear what the workflow steps are, and it's clear about the approval path. So kind of on the left, what you're seeing is a screenshot of the CIM form. It's showing that this is the proposal for English 680. Because this is a course in the Department of English and Comparative Literature, it has set up the workflow to go to those steps in the workflow. So it goes to the ECL, which is abbreviation for English and Comparative Literature. It goes to that department's student services manager, to their curriculum committee, to their chair. And you'll see on the right that workflow, those steps that are highlighted in green, that means it's cleared that step in the workflow. The step that's in yellow shows that the proposal is at that step in the workflow process, and then the gray steps are steps that are coming after. The approval path gives a date and time stamp of who approved it at that particular step in the workflow process. If this were a proposal for a first year seminar, a course that was numbered between 50 and 88 or 89, it would recognize that and establish a workflow step for the first year seminar need. So it's based on what is provided on that form, it will generate the proper workflow steps.
All right, another new feature is the ecosystem. So whenever you're revising an existing course, and if that course is mentioned on any page in the catalog, it will list where that page or where that course is listed. This is important when you do things like, for example, change the number of credit hours of our introductory calculus course. Changing the credit hours on that will change the total hours required for a lot of different undergraduate degrees on our campus. So knowing who exactly that's going to impact is very helpful. As where this chemistry course may not be included in the primary required courses for the neuroscience or nutrition majors, but it may in fact be an elective or something like that. So it's even if it's not going to impact the other department's overall hours, it's important to just give an idea of who is going to be impacted by your changes, because this is one big ecosystem. Another really nice feature that we now have is red-green markup. For those who used CRAS, you'll be familiar that CRAS, when you made any changes, there was a page where you could see the old version versus the new version. And it would pull the fields that changed, but it wouldn't give you any indication of what changed between those fields. So if it was just one word or two that got tweaked in a course description, it was really difficult to see. This, however, will show you the new value in green and bold, and the old value that's being deleted, red strike through. So it makes it very apparent to the user what information is being replaced. There's also an option if you happen to be reading something that's very long and there's a lot of red-green markup and you just want to see the final version, it is possible to see just the final version if that is what you need to see. It can all be in red, yes.
In that particular case, if you're just wanting to see the final version, it'll just put everything out in black.
Oh, okay.
Make it easier for you to read.
Yeah. And the other nice feature too is if multiple people had edited a particular proposal, you could also select the user and see what that specific user edited. You can see all the changes, you can drill it down to just changes for a particular person who edited, or you can view all changes at once. Couple different options.
Other additional new features. So we now have a rollback option. So for those who are familiar with CRAS only moved one direction. If something was incorrect about a course request, either the person who had it had to fix it, or the request had to be completely kicked out of the system and started over from scratch. This, however, if there is, say, something wrong with a syllabus or you need additional information, you can click that rollback button and the system will give you the option of everybody who has approved it so far. And you can select any one of those users to roll it back to. And it will take the request back to that person and give them an email that says, hey, you need to look at this request again. Along with that functionality, when you do select rollback, you have the option to add a comment, and which will be very helpful in cases where, say, you need to ask them to look at their syllabus or provide some additional information. So that comment is kept with that particular rollback. Additionally, the rollbacks will appear on the approval path. So if you do have to roll something back to the faculty member who initially submitted it, it will log that. Additionally, when it goes back to that very first person, it will require that same course to go through all of those steps to get back to you. Because if there's some fundamental value changing, it needs to be re-reviewed by the folks who previously reviewed it. Another brand new feature is renumbering. So in CRAS, you could not change the subject code or the catalog number in the actual CRAS request. You had to just know to type at the bottom, please change the number of this or the subject code of this. And we would have to do that outside of the system. We've labeled this renumbering, but you can change either the subject code or the number or both of them just very easily in CRAS. We have had in CIM, we have had many faculty members go in and do this with no instruction on how to do it. When you do change either the subject code or the catalog number, it will give you the red-green markup about what has changed, and it will list, if you are renumbering, it will list at the bottom, formerly known as, and we will include that in the catalog description for students so they can see, I took this course 2 years ago and now it has a new number, in case they need that information.
Kim check, make sure that we are reducing the number of photos.
It does, and we are going to get to that on the next slide. So one of the features that Kim has is field validation. So for example, I didn't pick a screenshot of it, but if you go in to renumber a course, it will check first that that course number is available, and second, that that course number is in the appropriate range for that course. So if you're trying to submit a new undergraduate course, you can't pick a catalog number that is in the 700s. Similarly, if you try to request a course number that already exists, it'll pop up an error message saying that value is not unique, you can't put that in. Other measures of validation that are in the form, not to go over all of them, are things like the course title and transcript title and course description fields. It may be a little bit difficult to see just because it's so small in the screenshot, but each of those fields have a countdown underneath the field saying you have this many characters remaining or you have this many words remaining. For the transcript title field especially, we force that title into all caps. It's the standard that we use on our campus. So we have those little tweaks behind the scenes so that users don't have to learn the system. They don't have to memorize these somewhat arbitrary rules that we have, that the system will actually just go ahead and do that for them.
Another feature that we've added to the CIM form is information about paired and sequence courses. So there are some cases where courses may have some similar content, But they are two distinct courses, but similar enough content that we don't want students to take both courses and earn credit. So now we've added this as a specific question on the CIM form for the instructor or the department to provide. And it's a very simple, select the green plus button and insert the specific course number that belongs in that pair. Again, there is validation to verify that this course does exist. And so we're collecting that information on the CIM form. And so we find that to be a very helpful process. Any changes to a paired course, the degree audit team in the registrar's office will be notified for them to make those updates. And sequences are courses that need to be taken in a specific order. That information can also be collected on the form.
So I think I saw that you had a workflow at the department level. So if somebody at the department level is making sure that this new course really has separate content.
Right. So the paired courses is an opportunity for the person submitting it, maybe the faculty member, to provide that information. But then, because the courses go through workflow at the department level, student services manager, curriculum committee, and a chair, that's another opportunity for them to see, okay, we're proposing a new course. Is there something that's similar in our inventory that we need to now pair it with? So that process can be done at the department level, and we really encourage it to be done at the department level rather than college level. So that's sort of part of the workflow and approval process. Yeah. Probably one of my favorite new features of the form, just really excited, justification statements. So this is where an instructor, when they're selecting a particular general education requirement, they can provide a justification statement. That's really helpful in the review process when this course gets reviewed by the college's curriculum committee. We do review the syllabus, but sometimes it's also helpful to read the information from the instructor so they can provide that information. And then providing information about why they're wanting to propose this new course, how does this fit into the department's curriculum, that kind of thing.
Oh, and just to pause real quick, before any folks who are outside of the College of Arts and Sciences get worried about this, one of the fields that you do have to select is what career the course is in. So, for example, if you are in the School of Law, you won't see any fields about general education requirements because those aren't in your school. So the form is responsive to the values that you put in at the top and won't prompt you for justifications for things that you don't need to justify.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Point. Sometimes I get in my own world of undergraduate curricula and I forget that there are course proposals outside of undergraduate curricula. So thank you, Charlotte. So another feature we talked a little bit about is comments on the CIM form. So a reviewer can provide comments when they're reviewing a course proposal, and that stays on the form so that the person who submitted it can see that information at the end of the process. If you have to roll back a form, as Charlotte mentioned, all of that information, when you provide a rollback, you have to put in some kind of comment. That information is part of the email message, but it's also then gets added to the CIM form. So it's all right there on the form when it goes back through the review process. So all of that information is date and time stamped as well. And I find that to be very helpful because I'll roll back things all the time and say, take a look at this, we need you to make one update. Once it gets back, I've got all that right on the form, all the information. Before I was having to track that on a spreadsheet, like why did I need to reach out to this department? So all the information is right there. Another new feature is the ability to generate an agenda, particularly for these department curriculum committee meetings or the college curriculum committee meetings. There is a link that we can share with you, and we'll make sure it's part of the help guide for CIM courses. You go to this link if you have access to CIM, and you select, as you can see on step 1, you select what role you want to generate that agenda for, whether it's a curriculum committee or a chair role. Generate the output, whether it's HTML, PDF, or Excel, and then it creates an agenda in order. of the courses that are at that step in the workflow process, including new courses and revisions. So this could be something that if a department wanted to have a meeting to review all the courses that they're proposed at their step in the workflow, they schedule that meeting, they generate this agenda, send it out, they can review all the proposals in CIM. So it's just another tool to help organize the work at the department level. A couple things about tips and tricks. One of the pain points that we've heard in the last couple of weeks is when there are multiple people who are assigned to the same role. That happens quite a bit, right? If there's a curriculum committee, there's multiple people assigned to the same role. We've set it up that everybody who has that role gets the email notification when a proposal gets routed to that step. So if there's one real eager person in that committee of 10 people, and they go in and they select it, they review it, they click approve, it then advances that proposal to the next step in workflow. So the other 9 members, if they're slow, they don't get to it. They don't see it. So that's one point that we need to make sure departments are really familiar with and understand they've got some sort of working process. So if that's the case, kind of organize their work to make sure maybe one person is assigned to select the approve button after everyone's had an opportunity to review it. Another way to solve that is if we can identify just one person in that role to receive the email notification. So that's another option, so that one person gets all those email notifications. Once they have a collection of courses to review, then they notify the other people in that role and say, go in, take a look, review everything, and then we can determine which courses should get approved, which one can get it.
So the person who approves it, gets it approved, but all the other committee members will never know that it only that one person approved it. And then would you be able to go back so that they can have an opportunity to review it?
Exactly right. So if that's the case, if somebody in a role approves it before other members in that role see it, then what we would do is have the person at the next step in the workflow roll it back. And then everybody gets the email message, and everybody in that role has to review it. So we just want to make sure that departments know how that works and that they kind of come up with a process to organize that work if there's multiple people assigned to a role.
Additionally, if you have a circumstance where, say, you are the student services manager in a department and you make a change to a request and then you approve it and it goes on to the curriculum committee in your department or the chair, and then you later realize that, oh gosh, I need to do some other change to this request. If you have approved it, you can no longer update the request. It is out of your hand. You approved it. You said it looks good. If you need to change it, either the person who currently has it can change it, or they can roll it back to you. But you cannot change it. It doesn't matter if it's something like, oh, I missed one word, or oh, I attached the wrong version of the syllabus. If you have already approved it, you don't have access to it. You only have access to it if it is at your step waiting for your approval. Additionally, departments define their own internal processes. I don't know how many emails Nick's office has been getting about this, but we certainly have it in Registrar. We have designed CIM to be very flexible to reflect the variety of organization structures that are on our campus. However, we don't know what your department does and what your department's preferences are for how they want to internally review courses. We've been getting a lot of questions saying, well, what should we do? And the answer is, well, what do you want to do? So I am sure that some folks don't want to hear that flexibility, but it really is up to your internal process.
Do you have guidelines? I mean, I think people like to have guidelines. Right?
So we have 4 different example workflows that we suggest that are available on our CIM website and in the user's training guide.
Yeah, definitely that's one good resource, and we can kind of think about other ways of providing some guidelines, some best practices.
Right, I mean, it's probably a best practice for departments to have their curriculum review committee or something like that, right? So
We do suggest structures, but the ultimate decision is
But I
up to
like
the
the
department.
idea of using what we already have, the 4 models, and then kind of expanding on that to get some more best practice.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think this campus is hungry for that. You know, so everybody has had to make up their own processes, and I think they're hungry for some guidance about what would be a good process.
Well,
And
it's,
then they might say, oh gosh, my faculty didn't put up with that.
which is,
But still, at least we've given them some guidance about some.
Just kind of want to clarify, so the whole process in CIM starts with the faculty member, correct? Or could it also be like the student manager?
It could also be your student services manager. So what we, best practice, if it's a brand new course, we think the instructor should submit that. They have all the information, they're developing the syllabus, they've got access to the link in Faculty Center in ConnectCarolina, and they should post that course. Maybe if it's inactivating a few courses in the department that haven't been offered in 5 years, that might be something that the student services manager can coordinate and get those sessions in CAM. You do have to be a user in CAM, which you can, there's a form on the registrar's website to get access to it, but student services manager can certainly do that. And if there's this one case where like an instructor just has no interest in submitting a proposal, you can submit a brand new course proposal on behalf of that instructor and put that instructor's name on it.
And can faculty, like if the faculty wants their course, they go in, same process, they make, they
Absolutely.
So they don't necessarily have to go to service.
Yeah,
Yep.
right? Get the student service manager out of the way, right?
yeah, our big objective with this was,
But see, here's the flexibility, right?
Right.
This is where like the student services manager and maybe global studies wants to be part of that workflow to do some quality control so that they can get set up and work with that.
Can I ask how, because when we communicated to our faculty or this process now, and I have to say, I said, you can go into CIM, this is what you can do, this is the user guide, I will walk you through it, or you can do what we've been doing, you can send me the thing, can I give them that flexibility this time? But how, it seemed like a lot of them were not aware, in varying degrees, were not aware of CIM or something like that. Is there I imagine there is an effort to communicate, reach out, do training sessions with geared towards faculty for CIM?
Yeah, so a couple things that we've been doing leading up to the implementation is talking about it at directors of undergraduate studies meetings. We've done that in a couple meetings and asked them to share that information with faculty. You know, we have not done at least I'm aware, we haven't done a full, we can send a message to the all faculty listserv. I think there's, yeah,
Right.
but there's been lots of efforts to try to get the information to coordinators in the departments, whether it's a student services manager, a chair, a director of undergraduate studies, and ask for them to reach out to their faculty. Yeah.
we have also been offering trainings that are primarily aimed at folks who are student services managers in departments, with the offer of, if you have a large group of faculty or staff who would like training, we are happy to work with you to set up a time where we can say, come to your faculty meeting and say, okay, here's a 20-minute rundown of how you submit through CIM. Just getting it out there, trying to integrate it into things faculty are already doing rather than saying, show up at this time in this place, because that's not going to work for a lot of them.
And I'm going to throw out one other suggestion, and my colleagues in the registrar's office may not like this, or I've been talking to them about this, but one option we could consider is maybe doing like a 30-minute session with departments that have a curriculum committee, have those members come and do a quick training on how to access the approval section of CIM and how to generate an agenda and sort of how to manage that work. So we can kind of think of a couple different ideas of like a training session for proposing a course, but then also a training session that helps departments manage the approval process.
So have faculty members take class, do class before? Is this something that we will do?
Yeah, it's a good question. So before in CRATS, it was a student services manager. So they were not involved in the process. Now it's a real culture shift, right? Now they can be involved in that process and make those decisions. So that's new.
So we're going to try to run through future features real quick.
Yeah. So one of the highlights I've been hearing in a lot of these sessions today is, how can we make improvements on what we have? And we're same is true with our CIM product. We want to continue to build on this and make improvements. The best ways to do that is to get feedback from those who are using it. So if you're involved in it, please reach out to us. We wanted to just highlight a couple features that the CoreSafe product offers that we're thinking about for a future year. Certainly want to get through this first cycle, see how things go. This would be for 2019. One of the features that they have available is voting, to allow departments that have curriculum committees to have a voting feature. This is a screenshot on the right of what it would look like, although there's lots of customization that can be done for Chapel Hill. But it could include information about whether the course is approved, yes or no, provide some comments, provide voting results on the screen. So there's lots of different options that may be available. So we're going to be looking a little bit into that. And some of the rules that would need to be determined and set up when we implement this is things about quorum, whether there's enough members from that committee that have reviewed and approved that proposal, what percentage of yes votes need to be selected for a course to advance to the next step, and how long should a proposal be at a particular workflow step before it closes. So those are some of the rules that we would need to work on, but I believe that those can be set for an individual department. We'll certainly find out a little bit more, but I think that might be another nice tool and resource for departments to use. And again, this is just how that might work. When a proposal form reaches a voting step, an email notification will go out to all those members from that particular role. Members will cast their vote. If the vote would succeed, if the voting rules are met, and the time period has elapsed, and then that proposal gets routed to the
Just to follow up on that, we mentioned one of the issues that we're currently seeing a lot is curriculum committees where there are multiple users and one user gets really froggy and goes ahead and approves. Implementing voting rules where departments can support that would address that issue, because it would keep one person from being able to approve it and make it disappear from everybody else's view. Yeah. Another feature that we are looking at implementing in the future is called parallel workflow. So there are some instances where a course request may need to go to two different entities for approval, and those approval steps may best be timed together at the same time rather than being sequential. So say, for instance, a course, this is not the example, but a course that is a first-year seminar that needs to be reviewed by the administrative boards of the university because it's undergraduate, but also needs to go to the first-year seminar office for their review. Well, it may take quite a while for it to go through both of those offices. So it is advantageous to getting the course in place in time if it can go through both of those approvals at the same time rather than going through them sequentially. So we're looking at the possibility of implementing that in a future year. So that's just a little bit more about what the parallel workflow would look like. It will make it very clear about where exactly it is, even if it's sort of in two places at one time. Again, we haven't implemented it, so more information about that once we have it.
I'll give one other example of it. It would, if a course was at that 400 to 699 range, undergraduate and graduate level, we could utilize parallel workflow so the course can be reviewed by the college and by the graduate school at the same time.
The other major thing that I've already mentioned is the program form. So for any new programs being proposed, so this means if there's a new major or minor being proposed in the college, or if there is a new degree program being proposed in the graduate school or in one of the professional schools, the request for that would be tracked through CIM programs. Additionally, for undergraduate programs that print their degree requirements in the catalog, any revision to those degree requirements would also go through this CIM program system. Right now, we don't have a really efficient way of tracking that. Essentially, if any new program is being implemented or changes are being made to program requirements, it's all a chain of emails. So sometimes things slip through the cracks and get lost because there are a large number of offices that are involved in this process. And the process of getting a new degree program approved at UNC can stretch for years, quite commonly. So having all of this information and all of the documents associated with these proposals housed in one place will make it more efficient. It will help us to keep track of things so they don't slip through the cracks, and also make sure that we're getting this information updated in a timely manner. Anything else to say about programs?
Yeah, I think it would be, once we have that implemented, it's using CIM for all curriculum related items. So we really think it's going to be a terrific tool to capture all of the curriculum changes, courses, and programs. And again, that connects nicely with Carolina and catalog. So basically, it's a nice system where we can put our hands around the entire curriculum process.
With that, we're aware that this is going to get posted for people to see in the future, so we've included a few different links to possible resources that you may want to look at. And with that, I think we're ready for questions. I know we've been taking questions
All
throughout.
right, so my big question is, you said you had 800 things submitted since August.
Yes.
70 have been going through the whole process. So what is the general cycle and when do they have to be approved to get in the catalog for 2019?
Yep, good question. So for the undergraduate side, October 15th is the deadline. We have a faculty committee that meets monthly to review all course proposals. October, November, December, January, February, March. The catalog for 2019 gets published on June 1st. So we need to have the catalog ready to go usually about a month in advance. So all the course proposals will need to be approved through workflow and CIM by late April. And once that happens, it all gets put into, it all feeds into the catalog.
We have a graduate deadline of January 15th when we ask that graduate courses be submitted by. We also try to encourage our professional schools to submit by that deadline. While our graduate courses are printed in the catalog and do need to be there in place that month ahead so they can appear, we don't currently print professional school course information, so they get a little bit more leeway, and sometimes they can stretch into the summer as to when their course revisions are happening. So it really, the highest volume is between October and end of March, but we still get a significant amount throughout the year.
What you have so far, you've got to process 100 a month to make it.
We'll do it.
We'll do it
every year.
Yeah, we do it every year. These numbers are not out of line of what we've seen in the past. Because they're of varying complexity. There are ones that are in activations, which are very simple for us to process.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's ones that are very complex, where we need to go in and build Boolean logic to determine the enrollment rules for the course. One of those could take 30 minutes. So it really is, there's a wide variation.
And then do you have some kind of report you run to figure out to transfer equivalencies?
So we don't actually have that as part of the course revision process right now. I know that we are starting to look at the ways that we are maintaining those tables possibly, so it may be something we move to in the future where we're more tightly working with admissions to talk about those transfer equivalencies.
It's, I mean, at the very least, it seems to me that you could say, here, give me a list of what all the changes are, so we could see if they.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. I think especially things that are inactivated and renumbering, that kind of information needs to be updated in the transfer tables, and admissions needs to be aware of that. So we could generate a report at the end of the cycle that kind of identifies those particular transactions, the renumbering and inactivations.
There are also some bugs with the way that the admissions tables work for transfer credit that makes sometimes courses show up regardless of whether they're active or inactive, and it just makes it very confusing for folks on the admissions side who are trying to populate that table and maintain those records.
Anyways, it's something to keep.
Yeah, it's something we're aware of, and
Yes.
I think it's something that we're starting to move toward addressing. There's several initiatives that will require us to be more attentive and work closer with them.
Good, very specific question. Okay, so
Sorry for everybody else.
When we love how integrated it is, and of course it's being changed, you see the pages that it'll impact versus for an interdisciplinary program like ours that has hundreds of courses across the university. If courses were renumbered or substantively changed, we would. I mean, a lot of that onus would still be on us, and there's no mechanism for. I mean, if it's deactivated, it would just come out of our course catalog, it would be highlighted, and that would be an automatic process, and that's amazing in and of itself. But anything above that, we would need to spot check.
Actually, if a course is being renumbered and it belongs on one of your course lists for the major, that will show up in the editing catalog as a red strike through. This course no longer exists. My office, undergraduate curriculum, does that research to determine it's been renumbered, and then we'll update your course list with the new number. So our office handles that before we start the catalog editing process on February 1st.
So do course numbers get deleted at all?
They don't ever get deleted. What happens is if you inactivate a course, it will go to what's called inactive status. And it will live in inactive status for 5 years. During that 5-year period, you cannot use the combination of the subject code and catalog number. After that 5 years, it will go into what's called archive status. Once it's in archive status, you can reuse the subject code catalog number combination. Why it sort of has this limbo period, those 5 years, is one, so that if you suddenly need to reactivate it for some reason, it is right there. You can go in, find it, and reactivate it. It's also so, particularly for our undergraduate population, we don't offer a course as one thing the first semester of their first year, and under the same subject code catalog number combination their senior year second semester, and because that would look weird on a transcript to have the same course show up twice as different things. So we have that 5-year period as sort of a cooling off that addresses that issue most of the time.
Any other comments or questions about your experience? So glad you joined us for the last session of the conference. Charlotte and I would be happy to stick around if you have individual questions. Again, and I want to thank all of the volunteers and the people who organized the conference. It's been a terrific day. Learned a lot, so thank you.
Thank you.